Hello everyone and welcome to a new ATFX video. My name is Gonzalo Canete and I'm here in this occasion to talk about inflation. The PCE inflation rate is about to get published by US authorities and is the most important one in relation with inflation that Federal Reserve follows. That's why it's very important to take a look deeply into the PCE inflation in this video and also include at the end of the video a technical analysis to more or less estimate how it could affect to SP 500, euro dollar, and dollar index. I compilate all the information I think you will need to understand what could be the next move of the market following this data. But before we start, let me remind you that if you are not subscribed to this channel, you should be subscribed. Not only that, you should also click on the bell to receive notifications anytime we update new market events that you should keep watching and following if you want to be update about what could be the next events. So today the presentation I have done is on relation to the PCE inflation. Let me go into details here. The first thing, what is the estimation, the forecast? Cleveland Federal Reserve estimate 2.6 to 2.9 annual PCE, core PCE inflation. Also, Philadelphia Federal Reserve is also estimating a core inflation by the end of this year about 3.4%, at or below 3.4%. As you can see, there are certain discrepancies between different Federal Reserves, different states at this regard. Market position. We know that the market is discounted between 85 to 95% chances that the Federal Reserve is going to cut the interest rates. And this is the key. This is the important part of this report. The inflation will determine if Federal Reserve can keep going on the interest rate cut, or in case that the results are above the expectation and we can see a rise of inflation, that will maybe change the minds of some of the members of Federal Reserve in terms of cut the interest rate. Because cut the interest rates with a growing inflation, it's something that you should never do if you follow the economical handbook. Now, I just took a couple of charts. One of them, in the left hand, we can see cmngroup.com, which is the one of the institutions to publish the polls regarding what is the expectation of the feeling of the market in terms of the interest rate cuts. And as you can see, 89.2% of those ones in the poll say that the interest rate is going to drop to 3.5 to 3.75. That's going to be the interest rate reference. This number could radically change if the inflation, PCE inflation, is coming in the wrong way, which again, it means it's above the expectations. And you can see that because the market is expecting an interest rate cut and inflation should be, again, according with the expectations or below, then the dollar is getting weaker. And we have seen this chart showing us a drop on dollar value. This is the dollar index and it's dropping, as you can see in this chart. Obviously, the market is discounting that the dollar gonna get weak because the Federal Reserve gonna cut the interest rates because the inflation is not an issue. Now, follow the evolution of the inflation by PCE. We can see that in 2022, we experienced the peak, the top high since in many years. On the report, we say exceeding 5%. The truth is it was exceeding even 7%. As you can see here, it was about 7% the PCE inflation on summer 2022. It was incredible. It was one of the biggest PCE inflation registry ever. Headline: PCE inflation is 65%, driven by pandemic era supply constraints and demand surge. We also got the second state mid of 2024, the summer 2024. Finally, the core inflation PCE was dropping below 2.5%, which was good news, but still it was moving since then between 2.5 to 2.7 in the coming period. So 2.5 to 2.7 year over year through mid of 2025. And the expectations, the forecast for 26-27 is remain between 2 to 2.3%. Hopefully that will be the result. But as you can see, this is the trajectory. And we can see that since 2024, PCE inflation has been below 3% constantly. And also, if we take a look in the closed data, we can see the standard inflation is around 3%. The last data published, which is September, it was 3% on a standard inflation and about 2.7, 2.8% on PCE inflation. As you can see, both start to switch from spring or summer 2025, start to rise back up to the levels that we have faced at the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024. So hopefully these numbers not gonna twist the whole point of Federal Reserve. But again, keep eyes on this because this is the key to understand what's coming next. Now, to finish with the fundamental parts and all the aspects, first of all, I highlight the difference between the standard CPI inflation and the PCE inflation followed by the Federal Reserve. As you can see, the CPI inflation, the standard one, is around 3%, while the PCE inflation is around 2.7%. And therefore, we remain in those historical difference in weight and formula. And again, Federal Reserve is following the PCE inflation because they consider it is less volatile than the CPI. Policy market tensions. Federal officials stress inflation remains about 2%, and this is the main topic, the main discussion internally in the Federal Reserve is if keep cutting the interest rates could cause or warns the situation of inflation right now in the United States. And don't forget that by the beginning of 2025, Federal Reserve was mentioned, many officials of Federal Reserve were mentioned one and over again that inflation will come due to the Donald Trump's tariff, which didn't happen yet. Expectations overshot. Consumer Survey reports 1 year ahead inflation expectations between 3.1 to 3.4%, and therefore the public, the citizens see higher expectations in inflation than the authorities. So the expectation by the public is around 3.2 to 3.4% inflation next year. That is contrary to the expectations given by Federal Reserve, and therefore we need to keep eyes on that because it's a discorrelation or a kind of breaking point for understand what is really going on. The perception of the citizens or the authorities, who is giving us the clear view. Now, finally, you got in the screen here the SP 500 futures, and as you can see, has been doing really well the last week, recovering all those drops, caused, by the way, by another data, which was labor data published from September, but during November, it was published the data from September, showing that non-farm payrolls were higher than expected, and it was causing a drop on the market because, therefore, good numbers, good macroeconomic numbers means maybe there is no reason to cut the interest rate. Same thing could happen with inflation. If inflation, the PCE inflation coming is above the expectations, therefore it could cause another drop on the market. Right now, the SP 500, as you can see in the chart, is pointing up, even giving us a bullish pattern, showing us that the expectation of the market of interest rate cuts is moving in that direction. Wall Street is stimulated by that interest rate cuts, and therefore, if the inflation rate is above the expectation, could twist all this sentiment and feelings on the market. Now, if we go to dollar index, we clearly can see how it has been dropping for the last couple of weeks, mainly the last week, because of that expectations of interest rate cut. Again, 89% of feeling of interest rate cut in December based on the pools by the CM group that I shared with you a few minutes ago. And if we go to euro dollar, obviously, if that's the scenario and finally we can confirm that inflation is not a problem and the Federal Reserve is going to cut the interest rates, hopefully we're going to break out 1.1650 in euro dollar up, and therefore breaking that those resistance will move us to the next coming level, which could be 1.1750, 1.18 on euro dollar. So that's all. That's very simple, quick and clear. I believe I have been concise on this topic. I hope you like it. And remember, if that's the case, give me a thumb up and subscribe to the channel. Bye-bye.